Hey everyone, welcome back to Crunching Your Growth, the show where we dive deep with entrepreneurs who've built, scaled, and evolved their businesses by thinking differently. I'm your host, Phil Masiello, entrepreneur, brand builder, and founder of Crunch Growth, the revenue acceleration agency. We've been helping brands scale profitably for over 20 years. So we don't just teach theory, we write books on it. So when you listen to this show, you're not just getting advice from me and other entrepreneurs, you're getting real world experience, lessons learned in the trenches, wins, losses that shape the playbook we use to help brands thrive. So on this episode tonight, our guest is Luke Peters, a founder who started in his garage and built NewAir into a national e-commerce powerhouse with over 600 million in lifetime revenue. He did it without outside funding. He scaled across Amazon and big box retail, landed multiple times on Inc.'s 500 list. So now Luke is on a mission to help other founder and CEOs do the same. He joins us breaking down his APPM framework, alignment, product, people, and margins, and explains how you can use it to grow stronger, scale faster, and maybe even exit smarter. So let's bring Luke in and let's hear his backstory and how he did what he did and where he's heading today. How you doing, Luke? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Phil. Thrilled to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Nice. I'm glad you took the time to come on. So you've got an interesting backstory. It'd be great to explore that, talk about what you did, and then how you built NewAir, why you chose that category, and what some of the steps you did to grow. So it'd be great to start that conversation.
Sure. Yeah. Going back, we were just joking about this, but yeah, going all the way back, I grew up in a big family of 12 in Fountain Valley, California. We were not the favorite neighbors on the street. Let's put it that way. We were all working on our cars, and there was like an oil slick in front of our house. Okay, so I had we're all amateur mechanics as for the boys at least. But yeah, it was that kind of family. You have to work, so we did pools, and my parents had a donut shop. So we worked in the donut shop, and we all learned how to work and work graveyard or wake up early or whatever. And I wasn't a very good student. I was just, I barely graduated high school. Actually, I joke around. A funny story, my kids found one of my yearbooks, and I think one of the girls was like, "Luke, I'm so proud of you for graduating and passing English." And my kids are like, "Dad, what kind of student were you?" So, if I can make it, anybody can. But anyways, yeah, did that, went to school, got serious in college, and got a degree in microbiology and did very well there, and went to work as a hazardous waste scientist. Okay. So that's, along the way, I paid for school with a swimming pool business. So I was a service guy, the backyard cleaning pools. That's still a great business, by the way. And so yeah, I thought, wow, the government, they pay for your insurance, and you get a steady check. But the funny thing, Phil, was when I got there, all the older guys are like, what's a young guy like you doing here? You got to come back here when you want to retire. Get out of here. So I'm not kidding you. This is like, they really were telling me, like, do not be here when you're young. Anyways, that, at the same time, I'm, not making a lot, driving a beat up truck into Los Angeles from where I lived. It was like over an hour, way out by Dodger Stadium, if anybody knows the area, out in Glendale. And my little brother, who never went to college, is selling electronics online and making tons of money and driving a new car. And,
Wow.
and yeah, and he was probably 20 at the time, maybe I was like 25 or something. And so anyways, I'm like, wait a minute, something's not adding up here, and I started researching online SEO, and I know you're in the marketing business. And so this was back in 2001, let's say, about there, right?
A lot easier.
A lot easier. You just type the same word in 30 times, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I, was like, oh, there's something called SEO, and this is how you build. And back then we had to build a website. You basically had to know your HTML, or you could use like, Front Page, which is a Microsoft program. And it was a different world back then. And so just built, I'm like, well, that's how he's doing it. Okay. What am I going to sell? I went on to Yahoo, and I saw that the number 3 ranked. Okay. Yahoo showed which searches were happening most often. And
Right.
it was in the middle of summer, and they had portable air conditioners was in there. Okay. And I'm like, well, I should just figure out how to sell these things. So that's literally how the idea came about. And then it all went from there.
Really? That's amazing. So it wasn't your brand. You were just a reseller.
At the beginning, we had nothing. At the beginning, I didn't even know what a purchase order was. Okay. So so I call up Granger. If anybody knows, they're like the commercial Home Depot, right? And
Yeah,
I'm like, how do I buy these things? They're like, well, submit a PO. I'm like, what's a PO?
yeah.
And so what kind of discount can you give me? So, anyways, yeah, we just started literally at the beginning, we were just doing Granger arbitrage. We were getting a discount on Granger and listing them on the website. Then we started selling thermostats, and I bought all these domains like honeywellthermostat.net until they send me a cease and desist letter. And so we had some cool little strategies going. And what we did is, started quickly selling other people's brands, and then it took a couple years until I created my own brand.
Wow. And in appliances.
Yeah. So we were selling. So at the beginning, we were doing a lot of HVAC though. So fans, heaters, air conditioners, thermostats. At the very beginning, I'm still working for the government. Okay. And one time, like this customer ordered like a pretty good order of heaters, and I had this conference out in Sacramento. And it was right after 9/11, so nobody wanted to fly. So we all
Right.
drove out there. I'm like, "Hey guys, you mind if I take a big package with me?" Because I didn't want to pay for shipping. So we're driving into Sacramento, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, just circle this apartment building. Let me find out." And I walk up there with the heaters and deliver it to the guy. He's
Oh
like,
my
"Oh,
gosh,
that's pretty good service."
that's funny.
Yeah.
You were actually you weren't drop shipping. You were buying the product and then reselling it.
Right. We were doing that because you could get better margins, and the drop shipping, that game still worked back then, but you know how it is. It's like, you're not going to get great margins there. So we were buying the product. The good thing was Granger had local stores. So what we would do is we'd sell it, then we'd order it to this local store, go pick it up, and then ship it out.
Oh
And
wow.
that for 6 months.
I never saw a Granger local store, but you're right about drop shipping. I had a friend who was built a business drop shipping early on. They were doing cleaning supplies, industrial cleaning supplies, and I remember him telling me they did 21 million one year,
Mm.
and he had a profit of about I think $270,000.
Oh
And
wow.
I said, I don't understand what you're doing this for. And he said, well, we also get rebates from what we buy, what we do with these
Mm.
suppliers. So we don't count that into our profit because it comes later and, yada, yada. But still, at the end of the day, it was a lot of work for a very small amount of money, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
And
that's a very common.
yeah, but that was when you really could do drop shipping. Now it's such a crowded drop shipping market. I mean, there's so many guys out there selling, we'll set you up with drop shipping. You drop ship the product from us, and they're the ones making the money. And the poor people that are running the websites aren't making, anything. So,
Yeah. Customer acquisition is very expensive. It's a lot harder now. Back then, you could just win with organic. Now you got to
oh
pay,
yeah,
you know. So it's a totally different, yeah, you have to be the brand if you're selling a physical product.
yeah. I remember when we built our first website, which was around the same time, it was around 2000. And, you only had to worry about one screen, just a desktop, right? There was no
Yeah.
mobile, there were no
Oh, yeah.
anything else. And there was no plug and play, like there was no WordPress, there was no Shopify, there was none of that. And so
Mhm.
you had to build the site. And yeah, you could use Adobe or Front Page or some of these other ones that were out there, but it still was a pain in the neck. And I just remember the first website cost us over $100,000,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it was just because we had a lot of items, and it was food, and it was just it was amazing to me, and the shipping tools, UPS, FedEx, etc., just weren't capable of handling it the way they are today. And it was just such a struggle. But you're 100% right. It was so much easier to get customer acquisition because it really had to do with if you had a great URL that was attached to what people were searching for, you would just pop up, right? So
Yep.
if people were searching for, like you said before, Honeywell thermostats, you're going to pop up
That's
until
right.
they send you a cease and desist.
That's right.
You
The
know?
algorithm was much easier. At the same time, everything was harder, like you said, the supply chain, the website. So now everything's gotten so easy. It's just it that says something. Anybody can join the game. There's no barrier to entry anymore. So
Yeah.
those what were niches are not anymore.
No, you have to focus on building a brand today. You have to focus
Mhm.
on building the brand, being the brand, and expressing it. So I think in a lot of ways, there's more opportunities out there um,
Yep.
to really build your own brand and use the tools that are out there today, short form video, long form video, et cetera, to really get that brand out there pretty quickly in an efficient way if you know how to do it. But advertising is expensive, and SEO is. I don't want to say SEO is dead, but I want to say that traditional SEO, the way that it existed a couple of years ago, is dead.
Yeah.
Today you really got to structure it for AI search, essentially, right?
Yep.
Which is more intent based search. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So then, how long did you run that business for?
Yeah. So what happened is so we ran it for 20 years and sold it.
Oh,
That's
wow.
that's the long story. So ran it for 20 years and sold it. The first we moved warehouses about 6 times. So at the beginning we were out of a garage, then we're out of an 1,800 square foot, then
Yeah.
4,000, then 10,000, then 20. So it was we're eventually selling appliances, selling our brand of appliances. And these are, larger, not full size appliances, but let's say the countertops, the ice makers, the wine coolers, the beer coolers, the small fridges, beverage coolers, and a bunch of fans and air conditioning stuff. So they're mostly FedExable. Okay, most of our stuff, and then some of it was LTL, which is like on a pallet. And so we had a big operations, big logistics, and the first couple years it was just fast growth and just figuring things out, and then
Yeah.
things break, and then I learn, oh wow, okay, I better do this differently. But there's a series of those challenges over the years.
Yeah. Oh, no question about it. It breaks constantly. I was um, I was talking to some e-commerce entrepreneurs in a group, in a mastermind group, about a month ago, and they were all talking about how if they could just get stabilization in their supply chain, they'd be happy. And I said, well, there is no stable, there is no
No.
stabilization. It changes every day because as you grow, right, you outgrow your warehouse. You have to change your system for pick, pack, and ship. You have to look at how you do things. So it's a constant evolving. So if you're looking for stabilization, you're not growing. If you're stable and your supply chain is stable and your everything is working like a clock, then you're not growing.
Yep.
At least in my experience.
Yeah.
I remember watching when we were doing skincare, uh, and we had a partner who was handling our pick, pack, and ship, and we were shipping out to the retailers and the shopping channels as well as our e-commerce business. And it was just every month we'd have to look at a different piece of it because it would break. This wasn't working anymore, and then you have to work this. So it's a constant challenge. But in a lot of ways, that's the fun of it, isn't it?
Solving the problems, of course. Yeah, that and for me, like it is fun at the smaller scale, and then it gets up to a certain size, and then it's just a lot. And, and we got pretty big. I mean, we had 200,000 square feet of warehouse and a
Oh
lot of
my God.
people and a lot of operations. But yeah, that's part of it is just solving the problems, and then you kind of learn that like what really stands out. One of the big themes is like you have to be making a good margin. Okay, if you're not
Yeah.
making a good margin, either the market is telling you they don't value your product, or you're mistakenly underpricing your product and you're not making any money. So to your point earlier on with your friend, you're selling a lot, but for why, like you asked the question, why are you doing this? That's
Yeah.
like, that's a good question. You can go get a job, and not have all the hassle.
No, that's a really good point for a lot of entrepreneurs because if you're not making your margin, either you're undervaluing your product um, or the market's undervaluing you.
Yeah.
And how do you solve that problem? It's the problem today on Amazon, right? I've been on Amazon since 2006, and when you do FBA today, you really have to go in. I don't know if you were selling on Amazon, but you really
Mhm.
have to
Yeah.
go in with today in FBA, you really got to go in with about an 80 or 90% gross margin, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, 10 to 20% product cost because you've got your listing fees, your FBA fees, your advertising fees, your transportation in, your transportation out. I mean, it gets very, very difficult to make a profit on Amazon.
Yeah, it's interesting to say that. So we sold to Amazon. We sold mostly vendor, so that's where you have a direct relationship with them, and
Sure,
they buy your product instead of the the seller side. And we did seller as well, but not really FBA because our product's too big for it. So those that sell on Amazon know it's got to be a certain size, otherwise
sure.
you get dimmed out. So, anyways, we did that, and that there's other issues with that, by the way, as far as getting paid and chargebacks and all these things.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I mean, you have to have a whole accounting team just dedicated to Amazon. So the lure of Amazon is there. Right now, I wouldn't start a business that was Amazon dedicated. If it
No.
depended on Amazon, I wouldn't even do it. I'd just go find another business. I'm actually right now I'm doing the consulting, Phil, with other CEOs, but I'm also developing a product. Okay, it's a small product, and I'm still in the engineering, but I'm just gonna build my direct to consumer business on this thing. Like Amazon comes in a year or two or three, that's fine. But I don't want to go straight to Amazon. It's not a it's a lot of work, and it's not worth it unless you really get a lot of scale.
Well, I have a friend who has been selling on Amazon for close to a decade, skin beauty products,
Hmm.
and he's got a brand that's very successful, and he sells worldwide. And he was doing FBA, and and every year his margin is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, his profit margin. And what he started doing was he started doing more on TikTok
Mm.
and social media, and he started doing more with short form video and getting micro influencers. And he realized that every time that he got growth, something hit on TikTok, a video hit or something hit, his sales on Amazon and his sales on his website went through the roof. And so he decided that he changed his strategy and wasn't spending any money on Amazon's advertising. He's putting it all into micro influencers, and he's become more profitable. He still sells a lot on Amazon, but it's not his primary anymore. He's really focused on these different channels. The marketplaces, whether it's Meta's marketplace or TikTok shop, they're great, but they have issues, right? There's a lot of issues from the customer's perspective, but the reality is that the customer sees it, and we've tested this and proven it out as well. The customer sees the product on social media, and they're either going to go to Amazon or your website to buy it. So Amazon is a good vehicle still as a supplement or a place to sell your product, but not so much to, like you said, just to be an Amazon focused brand. It's just it's too difficult today.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
most people have to sell on Amazon. I guess I don't have to, so I'm doing this as like a fun project. It'll turn into a real business, I'm sure. But the thing with Amazon is like they own the market. So they are the marketing engine, really. So like you said, yeah, you want your eyes, you want to get the Amazon eyeballs and the TikTok eyeballs, but it is a challenge with the margin.
Well, they own the customer, and that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
The first place the customer goes when they see a product that they want is they
Yep.
look on Amazon to buy it,
Yeah.
and for a lot of different reasons, trust issues, credit card issues, security,
Simplicity.
Prime, etc. So you sort of need Amazon.
Hmm.
Um, People could talk about like Walmart.com, Target.com, all that stuff, but you're never going to do the volume you do on Amazon. But if you can minimize your costs on Amazon and sort of, you know, still get the marketing done another way and use Amazon to sell when you can. And then the real challenge is always to get those Amazon customers who buy your product on Amazon to convert to your website.
Yep.
And that's when I think you can be really strong. But if you're just reselling other products, to be honest, Amazon is it's just become a terrible place. I don't know anybody who's making money doing that anymore.
No, no, yeah,
Mhm.
you have to have your brand, but I think the key thing is what you said earlier. You got to have an 80-90% gross margin.
Oh
And
yeah.
not every product has that, by the way. A lot of them are in the 45-50, and you can't really make it on Amazon. I mean, by the end of it, your contribution margin's under 20% often, right? So, so yeah, the key I think is do you own some IP or something unique about your brand where you can then command that margin?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no question. And then, but the other piece is really using these other tools that we have today with
mhm,
like I said, short form video, micro influencers, social media to really get your product out there, to get that visibility without spending a lot of money. Because the flip side of that is, going at it without Amazon, which is fine. And I agree with that. But the flip side of that is cost of advertising is just tremendous. So you really have to be innovative today and really think of a way to break through the clutter and get people to notice you. There's a friend of mine who has a podcast. A guy named Jim James. He's from Great Britain, and he has a podcast called The Unnoticed Entrepreneur, and what his whole focus is throughout his life has been to figure out ways to get noticed, figure
mm.
out ways to get earned media without paying for it, right? And I have a story about that, but we could talk about that another time about what we did when we were in the shaving business. But you know,
Yeah, it's funny you bring up the influencers. We actually had an influencer program, so that was my main marketing thing at the last couple of years before I sold. Um, I could put, because for our products, for appliances, you are in that 45% gross margin, so it's a little bit of a
sure,
different, 45, maybe 50, and so how, what do you do? And so we had pretty diversified sales. We sell into the marketplace, we sell in store, we also sell. Direct to consumer. So we had the email list and all the advertising. And then on Amazon, you had their advertising. On Home Depot, you did their advertising. So, so where do I put the company's budget as far as marketing, right? So some of it would be in the paid marketing. But then what we did is we developed our own influencer marketing program based on a friend's company who was in the fashion business. And his company is interesting, 100% influencer marketing driving sales.
yeah.
100%. They would go find celebrities. It was almost like like the different what are the like the what are those Tampa, Florida channels?
Oh, HSN.
HSN, but he would find the influencers, and they would have a big audience, and they would do a rev share. Okay, so he would come up with a really high gross margin. They would do a rev share, then he would discount it when they did their video, and all of it was measurable. And then his team was basically constructed of like sales individuals that would have their book of influencers,
Right.
and that's how I ran it. Now I don't that stopped working a little bit lately. I think there was a time when the influencers had a higher ROI. Then what we did is we used it more for the SEO side of it, like getting the word out, maybe kind of what you're talking about, not for the direct sale. It was like, why would I write a blog? I can go work with an influencer and have them make a YouTube video of installing our product, and that every time we had a launch, we had okay, we have to do X, Y, and Z. One of them was get 25 videos done, da 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 da, and it worked very good.
Well, yeah, I think there's two pieces to it. One is the size of the influencer, because there are influencers out there that truly have influence. They can influence that sale,
Yeah.
and then there are ones that just have a lot of followers and can't really activate a sale. And so you have to spend a lot of time looking at that. We have a person who that's all she does is she does it for our clients, and she goes out and finds, but we focus more on micro influencers, smaller ones, because they tend to have more of a loyal following. And if you can get, so I don't know if you're familiar with a brand like Graza olive oil.
Mm-mm.
That it's a fascinating story of what they did
Mm-hmm.
and how they launched. But the day that they launched, they had given product out to 100 micro influencers, small influencers.
Uh-huh.
So the minute somebody searched, they saw their product everywhere. right? Somebody said, "Oh, I heard about this product, Graza." They go and they search, they look on social media or wherever, and they see all these people talking about Graza, and it definitely influenced their launch. And so we sort of take that approach with it.
Mhm.
And that's a successful approach. Bigger influencers, it's tough. You mentioned the shopping channels. I love the shopping channel business. I think that it's a great way to launch a product, launch a brand. If you can get in there, if you have something unique. If you just have a Me Too product, it's not going to do well, and they're
Yeah,
probably
that's
not
true.
going to
Yeah.
take it. But if you have something truly unique, we launched Raw Essentials with Carol Alt when we did a skincare line with Home Shopping Network in Tampa, and then in Canada, and all the other shopping channels. And you can really build it. Essentially, you're trading gross margin for television advertising
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
and so, but the beauty of what we learned there, and this was early on in the early 2000s, we learned how to structure a selling, a visually selling methodology, which serves us well today when we're doing short form, long form video for brands, because we understand how that video, how that storytelling was selling products.
Mhm.
So, but I love the shopping channels. Very clean business. They're great. But again, if you can hit it out of the ballpark with something, it does wonders. I mean, it really is fantastic. Um, so anyway,
Yeah, we had a couple great ones with them. One time we did a misting. I would just remember coming in and we had a misting fan. It's pretty unique, like you said. It's got to be somewhat unique because they're
yeah,
they're really good buyers. Okay, I mean they're like Costco buyers, like that quality. Like they're really looking at these products. And I come in and we had like 800 orders, and I see the team like on the ground with the packing slips everywhere. I guess the way they send the orders over isn't that organized, and they're not like the Amazon organizational level. So it's like
yeah, yeah,
we're having to match these sales receipts together. Yeah, but it's a
yeah,
good time.
yeah, yeah. It's a great business though if you can do it. So what are you doing now? Explain that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
When you
So
sold, when did you sell the business? A couple of
okay,
years
so
ago, or?
yeah, sold in 2021. So grew it all the way up to that time. We were about 80 million or so, and just over, and sold in 2021. And then ran it for a little bit. With private equity, they want you to stay on, and then luckily was able to promote a really good operator, and he's running it. And so I'm was able to step off and kind of do my own thing. So now I'm doing consulting, and I'm working with other CEOs, and I'm starting a mastermind as well, but mostly the one-on-one consulting, um, and work with the clients to grow their business and just kind of use my model and go deep. So it's not every business has a different pain point. So
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like not, and so, and I'm learning, what the best way to do this is, but I don't put a hard and firm system down. Okay, because a lot of times people like us, like they don't want to change what if you're an operator, you don't want to change what you're doing. Maybe you can change a little bit, and that's where I have to find. I got to massage that and say, okay, here's your biggest problem. Instead of saying, oh, here, let's implement EOS. They don't want to implement EOS, right? So we want to just find root cause, okay? And a lot of times it has to do with margin, okay? That's like literally what it's going to boil down to. How they're negotiating pricing from the top, go through the gross margin, and how they're merchandising and advertising, and then all the way down to how they're discounting, what channels are on. I personally like to focus right in on there and right
yeah,
on their product.
yeah. I would agree with you. We see it all the time because, well, obviously we have Crunch Growth where we help people scale. But
Mhm.
what happens is when we have a client, and we have one now, actually, that they get stuck, right? A guy starts a business and he goes from 0 to 10 million and he gets a little stuck. And then he figures it out and he goes from 10 to like 20 million. And we have
Mhm.
one now that got to about 20, 21 million, and they're stuck. They've been in that 20, 21 million for a couple of years. And they brought us on, and everybody thinks it's advertising. You run a better ad and we'll get. And so I said, I don't think that's the problem. You've got, something else is going on. And the guy hired this A plus sales guy because they did wholesale as well as a brand. Hired this A plus strong guy, And so I said, would you be interested in doing a 2-day offsite to focus on, because I do that coaching side of I have a separate business where I do a little bit of coaching. I
Hmm.
said, I'd like to understand this a little bit more. And the literally the first day it came out where the CEO, the owner, who founded the company, did a great job. He wanted to be on every single sales call. So you got this A
Hmm.
plus power player that you hired, and he's restricted on what he can do and the progress he can make because he's got to work around your schedule. Meanwhile,
Yeah,
you're running operations, you're running marketing, you're running this. I said, why do you want to be on every single call? That's your stopgap. That's your bottleneck right
yeah,
there. You gotta lose a little bit of control, or you're never going to get to where you want to be. And this was literally about a year ago. And, he finally relented and said, okay, I'll just come in for the close. And then it basically took the reins off this A plus player, and just the guy started just hauling. And I mean, he's probably going to add about $10 million worth of sales to this company in a year. And that's really where the guy wanted to be. So once he sees that, then his tune changes. Then it's like, okay, now I understand I'm the obstacle. I have to focus more on running the business versus, being on every sale and being the salesman. But you're 100% right. Every business has a different point. So you can't just say, okay, well, we have this system. We're going to come in and implement this system and it's going to work, because
yeah.
it's not.
No, no, it's interesting because it's like in your story, what's pretty common is the sales team isn't good enough, or the product just isn't
Oh,
differentiated enough.
yeah, yeah.
Sometimes it's like an amazing team got the company to 20 million, okay, in spite of a product that's probably just the same across other competitors.
Yeah.
Okay, they were good marketers, good sales. So you could have that. That's pretty common. And then, or your situation where you could bring in one great sales leader, and that could just double a company if you bring the right
Oh,
person.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, that we deal with that problem all the time. That's one of the
Mhm.
first questions we ask when we get a client is what what's the biggest difference between your product and your competitors? Because you want us to run ads, you want us to do your marketing, you want us to do all this great stuff for you, but what are we supposed to talk about? If all
Yeah.
we're saying is the same thing that everybody else is saying, you know, then what are we going to talk about? What's the customer going to hear? So you're 100%
Mhm.
right. The product, and a lot of times, the product that they have today is not the product they started out with, because they started to get pressure to drive profit and they started to take away things from the product that
Mm.
maybe were the differences. And all
Yeah.
of a sudden now you wind up with a homogeneous product.
Yeah, yeah, and on the same note, I was just had a podcast with a guest who has run 10 different businesses. So I'm kind of going through and we're like, all right, Keith, so what do you do when you get into these? So he's a turnaround guy,
Oh yeah,
okay?
yeah,
And but he also, now he bought a company with investors, so he's like the minority owner and CEO. And so he's kind of going through, and he does SKU rationalization is one of his biggest things.
yeah,
So he comes in, company gets bloated, they got all these SKUs, and it's like he just goes in and just cuts like half the SKUs out of the company, because probably your 50% of SKUs, like he said, he's like, I guarantee you 85% of your sales are those 50% of SKUs.
yeah.
And it's a lot easier for new fresh eyes to kind of come in there and do that and make that change.
There's no question about that. But the issue is to 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 rationalize the right SKUs, because I watched this brand. We were tied in with this PE company for a while that owned a bunch of brands, and they had bought this one brand. It was a legacy brand. Brand had been around 30 years. Great brand, and they were in the food business, and we were doing their marketing, and it was really really doing well. We added millions and millions of dollars to the sales, and the the president that they had and the PE company didn't see eye to eye. They wound up firing her. They brought this guy in who
Mhm.
said he was a turnaround specialist, and he started doing SKU rationalization and just wiped out SKUs without really paying attention or listening to
Mm.
anybody else. And
Mhm.
now, I mean, we walked away from them about a year ago, and now they're just in the it's terrible, because he got rid of all the products that made them completely different, and he kept all the
Mm.
ones. His rationale was, you know, we're gonna use the ones that are most like the national brands, and
Mm.
you don't have that kind of national brand money.
No, well, there's yeah, that's you do. So people have to have, well, actually, so a lot of times private equity gets a bad rap, but sometimes they're light-handed
Yeah,
because they realize that founder has special intuition in the market.
sure,
Okay, so if somebody just comes in from the outside and they just throw everything off, there's usually a balance. It's got to be like for me, I'm going to look at, obviously, there's a lot of variables. How long ago was this SKU launched? Because you're not just going to cut something that's brand new and it's got a trajectory. I like to look though at the gross margins of the SKUs.
sure.
Sometimes there's, so there should be like a rationale. And I think most companies can easily cut 10, 20%, no
Oh yeah,
problem. Yeah. Right. But if somebody just comes in and hacks with a bad strategy, then yeah, that's a bad situation.
oh yeah. It was an awful situation, and it was a great brand. But
Mhm.
we've talked about internally in our company. We've talked about making a play for it because it is a great. We know what the potential of it is, and but who knows? But yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, and we had with one of my earlier businesses, we had private equity in, and they were actually very, it was beneficial for us because they opened up a lot of doors. They really helped us to think about the business in a different way and understand the business in a different way. And I had a great experience with it. I've seen some of my friends that get involved with it have terrible experiences with it. So
Yeah, it can go it can go a lot of different ways. Um, but sometimes it's not their fault. And the thing is, like private equity now, they're worried about their reputation because they got to go buy other companies, and
sure,
good companies check. So I think the tables have gone, things have kind of leveled out a little bit. Like, in our deal, I'm calling uh, companies they purchase, and I want to make sure, hey, how are these guys? And so the sellers have, uh, the ability to do that now.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think you have to be careful when you're out raising capital or you're out talking to private equity about either an exit or an investment. You have to really know who you're talking to. You have to know what their strengths and weaknesses are because they're going to be essentially your partners for a while.
Yeah.
Whether they buy you or whether they just invest in you, they're going to be your partners for a while, and you have to know that they understand the business. You want strategy along with the money versus just capital, right?
Right, right. And there's so much for operators right now. One of the things that on my coaching side is we do focus on getting people to the exit. So that's a little bit of our differentiator, right? There's so much money on the sidelines with private equity. And a lot of operators don't, they're kind of, you're just surviving. Like they're not thinking about the exit. They're thinking about making the numbers this year. And and then so getting that longer term approach, hey, private equity or another buyer, what are the investors looking for? How can I position my company so it'll look better to the investors? And those are some of the things we work on. And that also, it's not just the numbers, right? Or it's not just the sales and marketing, but it's the financials that are often not very strong at a lot of these
Right,
companies,
right,
right? Because they're not, that's not top of mind. They don't want to spend for the, higher level CFO maybe, or the systems that are going to get, or sometimes they're not even on accrual accounting. And,
right.
and so anyways, yeah, that's another fun aspect of it.
Yeah. There's a friend of mine. He wrote several books. A guy named Vern Harnish, and he
Oh,
wrote.
great guy.
Yo, you know him?
I don't know him, but I've read his books.
Yeah, Scaling Up and
Yeah.
Rockefeller Habits. But he proposes that from the day you start your business, you should set it up to exit. And whether you have a plan to exit or not, or whether you ever exit, it doesn't matter. And what he's really talking about is making sure that you have the systems to continue to scale so that if something does come up, if there does an opportunity, you're ready to go.
Mhm.
Because rather than scrambling, right? And trying to put it all back together again, like you said, making sure that your balance sheet is in order, making sure that your financials are in order, making sure that you keep a good record of everything that you do. But he's a great guy. The other thing he told me a long time ago, about 30 years ago, he said, never be afraid to call anybody you want to talk to in business. He said, you know, because what's the worst that can happen? They can either say no, hang up on you, whatever. And he said, look, in college, when he was in college, he said, I got Ronald Reagan to speak at my school. I got an audience with Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive. He said, just by asking. And I took that to heart when we had a business. Um, we were trying to raise capital, and I cold called Jerome Kohlberg from Kohlberg, Kravis and Roberts at his house. He wasn't involved. They had left KKR and he had started his own investment business. And it was the funniest phone call because the guy, in between yelling at me, he kept asking me about what the business was. And I kept telling him, and we were on the phone for 45 minutes. And in between him yelling at me for calling him at home and then learning about the business. And then he hangs up and I thought, oh, nothing gained, nothing lost. And about a week later, 2 weeks later, his secretary called us up and said, "Can you be in the office tomorrow morning for a meeting with Mr. Goldberg?" And we were in Maryland, and he was in New York, and we said, "Yeah, yeah, we'll be there." And we drove up. We didn't get an investment. What he was trying to do was he had a business that was similar to what we were doing, and he wanted to see if there was a way to put them together. But it was just an interesting turn of events for a period of time. So I've always I never have a problem calling people or finding anybody, or I think it's great. But
Phil,
Vern,
that is a funny story because, and I didn't know that Vern had that idea or I mean, that philosophy, but it's funny because I said the same thing. Ask your way to success. That was kind of my thing. Ask your way to success. Never be afraid. I ask the dumbest questions, and even to the point where sometimes if I'm with my kids, like, Dad, you're just talking to this person, like you don't even know them. I'm like, that what's wrong with that? Like the younger, it's like you gotta make an appointment to talk to him. Just go talk to him.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and like you said, it's amazing what happens when you just ask a lot of questions, and some of them are dumb, but if you don't do it, and I find that sort of there's different personality types. Like the engineer types are the smartest, most brilliant people, and sometimes they're running companies, and sometimes it's the creatives, but the engineer types are sort of like they're not that they usually aren't socially like that.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So they are the ones who often have the amazing product, but they don't have the marketing. They need
right,
you, right?
right.
you
Oh
know?
yeah,
And
oh
then
absolutely.
yeah, so you've seen the difference, and they're not out there promoting themselves, and they're not asking the questions, but they're just focused on but they have amazing products, but they got to get in front of people.
Yeah, they think that we have a website and people will come and find it. Like,
Yeah.
okay, that's not going to happen.
No.
Yeah, I love that. But when we went in the shaving business, I there's really only two major razor companies in the world, right? Gillette and Schick. And then you have like Dorco and you have a couple others, but those are the two majors. And
Mhm.
Gillette's never going to private label, but Schick has a division that they did private label. They did. And when we got in the shaving business, I called up the CEO of Schick and said, or of Energizer, who owned them at the time, and said, "I'd want to come in for a meeting. I have this idea to sell razors online." This was early on before Dollar Shave Club and all that stuff. And, I got a meeting and here I am, we're sitting around this table in this conference room with all these corporate people, all buttoned up, and I'm in there talking about selling shaving on the web, and they were just, it was a funny, but we wound up getting the deal. We got an exclusive
Oh
on,
wow,
on a
that's
razor. Oh yeah, no, they were great partners. It was fantastic. That's how we launched Crunch Growth, because after we sold the shaving business,
uh-huh.
they called us up and they called me up and said, "Look, we don't know anything about direct to consumer and we need some help. We don't have a website that's direct to consumer. Everything we do is B2B, sell to supermarkets, drug, etc. So we need help. We sell to Amazon, we don't sell on Amazon." So we started doing things. And then about a year later, I said, I don't want to be tied to just one client. So we started bringing in others, and yeah, but they're great. I mean, I had a great experience with them.
There's a show near me called eTail West. I don't know if you've ever been to
Oh
that
yeah,
one. Yeah,
sure.
good e-commerce. It's out in the desert. It's beautiful. And but anyways, yeah, back early on, early 2000s, there's so much like a lot of stories that you're talking about. Okay, it's all these big retailers are trying to figure it out. They're all over at eTail West, and these young marketers are, all this new stuff is happening and attribution. Oh, what's attribution?
Yeah, yeah.
And they're making it into this like very complicated science, and it's like, oh wow, these young guys have figured this thing out called attribution.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there's a lot of, but and there was so much energy, and that now it's it's not as energetic in the shows as it used to be. That's kind of kind of a bummer. But early on, there's a lot of interesting stories like the one you're talking about, right? With these big brands, and they're like, "Whoa, this internet thing," and
Yeah,
somebody
yeah,
somebody gets involved and takes advantage of it.
yeah. No, it's fantastic. It was a great time. I love e-commerce. I've loved it since the beginning because it was so measurable. We did retail early on, and yeah, and we did television advertising early on, traditional television, and it's always just a guess, and you couldn't really attribute everything.
Mhm.
But now, we do connected TV ads advertising, which is so measurable and it's fantastic, so targetable, so measurable. So we love that. That's what I love about it because I love numbers. So
Yeah, it's fun. It's competitive. It's a great business.
yeah, yeah. So we've got about 4 minutes left, and so we should start wrapping it up. Any closings? I had a question though. When you were talking about your brother was doing electronics when you first started out, and then you got into doing appliances. Did you guys go together, or did you just stay separate?
No, we just stayed separate. And you know what? From all the business I've been in, I just partnerships are very hard.
Yeah,
You gotta be with the right person. And I'm a lone ranger. Even with this consulting thing, it's like I've had different groups. I mean, I can do definitely collaborations with other folks, and revenue shares. But as far as like the corporate structure, no, that would be tough.
yeah,
Yeah. So just started my own thing.
yeah, yeah. I understand that. So, any parting closing words? Anything for entrepreneurs focused on scaling growth? How they should do it? Any kind of parting words?
Yeah, well, first I would say for anybody young listening that you should try it. Okay, I tell everybody this. I guess it's kind of like people are sort of born athletes, and some people are just. I don't think entrepreneurship isn't about being smarter than anybody else. It's
No.
just kinda, it's, and I'm a testament to that. But it's more just about I think I don't, it's just being open. Actually, I think it's more about being open minded. Like, oh, okay, I'm going to try this, or I'm going to take this shot at this, and if it fails, I'll try this. But most people are very careful. I think actually is a good word to describe it, right? Especially your generation. So be less careful and try it and start a business because I think the future of the economy, it's just everything is becoming more consolidated. Okay, Phil. Like if you look out and you look at even just look at the S&P or just the any financial index, the bigger companies are getting bigger, okay? And that's consolidation. So when you have all that consolidation, I think working those jobs is less enjoy it can be less enjoyable at the big companies. Okay. It's not what it used to be. Let's put it that way. And so give it a shot when you're young, start a business, be in control of your destiny in your life. That's what I would say. And then number two is focus on the product from the very beginning. Just like if you have an amazing product and then figure the marketing and branding, those are the things I would focus on. And I think people don't spend enough time like on the differentiation. Like if you're going to contract manufacture, I mean, at least do something to differentiate it. Make sure you're not selling up against the factory because all the factories in China, they're selling here now. So that game is over. Like if you
Yeah.
just you're going to go buy from them and sell here, that ship has sailed. So you got to differentiate. And those are the fun challenges right now.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. You have to be different. You have to be very, very different. And once you're different, once you come up with your difference, then the marketing and advertising becomes almost easy because
Yeah.
you know what you're talking about. But
Yep.
where it's difficult is when you have a Me Too product. That's where we struggle most of the time when people come to us. It's like, just run ads and help us. Well, what are we going to say? What are we going to say that's different?
Yeah.
So we can run different ads, but at the end of the day, if your product's not different, so yeah, great. And if people want to get in touch with you, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn at Luke Peters or head over to apexceo.co. And yeah, that's where I am.
Okay, great. Hey, thanks for coming on. It was a it was a real pleasure. Thanks for taking the time out. And again, folks, that wraps up another high impact episode. If you're a founder looking to scale, improve your margins, prepare for an exit, Luke just gave you a blueprint. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a growth packed episode of Crunching Your Growth. And if today's insights helped you, share the episode with another founder who needs to hear it. And we'll have all of Luke's information in the description, the link to his website, the link to his LinkedIn. So until next time, keep building, keep scaling, and keep crunching your growth.